Don't mock. I'm not a fool. And people who know me personally know that I am not a fool. But I won't get into the details of those. I just want people to realize that I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool.
Hey there, it's Tony here, and welcome to the Dumb Leaders Podcast, episode 57 today. And today I'm responding to a question we received during the week, an anonymous question, I must say, and with some feedback. Can you please answer this in the podcast? So whoever you are, thank you for sending it through. Very much appreciated when we can engage and interact with the people and our valued listeners. So the question was, other than quitting, what would you do with a mentally inferior boss who micromanages you? Now, if you go back right to the start of the Dumb Leaders podcast, one of our early episodes, it must sit there within the top 10, or even over at dumbleaders.com, you'll see the article about the MicroManager. The person that hires good people and then, potentially tries to do the job for them. So the MicroManager is one of the biggest banes in our world when it comes to leaders. And the MicroManager is born out of a number of different, quite some complex characteristics. But, and I want to share this on a couple of levels. So the way the question is written, and what would you do with a mentally inferior boss who micromanages you? So the words mentally inferior indicate that there's something going on here, and it's not just the concept around the micromanagement. Now, I've got no other information other than the circumstances. Other than the question that was posed. I've got no other information on specific circumstances. But I really want to sort of look at this from two fronts. So first up, the first part of this question is based solely on you, the person that's asked the question. And the reason why I want that focus is because the problem that we often face with ourselves is that we'll judge people, or that we will judge them or measure them or compare ourselves to them or make some sort of perceptive statement in relation to them and based around what we think. And this may or may not be based on actual reality. And part of the problem that we have when we judge people, or that we measure them, or that we make a statement like mentally inferior, is the problem that we have is that often we if that's a comparison back to ourselves, which I'm presuming it would be because the person's saying this person's mentally inferior to me, one of the problems that we face is that when we rate ourselves, and there's been so much research done in and around this particular area, it's quite compelling and it's quite overwhelming. But when we rate ourselves, we often rate ourselves as better than what we really are, right? And this leads us to judge others based around an incorrect or an improper or a delusional perception of our own ability, our own judgment on how good we actually are and how good our skills, our knowledge and our actions are. So often we rate ourselves better than what we really are, and this leads us to judge others. And when we judge others, we're not actually learning to lead, or we're not allowing ourselves to be led, because we're making this judgment, and this judgment is then talking about putting us in a place where we feel superior, even though we may or may not be, because we see ourselves better as what we really are. And this is a real challenge. So the first response for me is that we've got to be aware that the judgment we're making on your boss is actually accurate. And I would also ask, what is that particular judgment achieving for you? the fact that you've actually asked this question, although it was anonymous, would indicate that it is actually eating you just a little bit, even if it's only slightly. But if we allow that continue to eat away, just like when cancer grabbed a hole in your body, it starts eating away more and more. So if you're continually looking at this person as mentally inferior to yourself, all that's going to create is discontent and bitterness and poisonous thoughts in and around yourself. And those toxins and poisons will ultimately defeat you mentally. So I really want you to think about, where does that label come from? Where does the judgment come from? And is that judgment actually serving you as a prospective leader? And if you can honestly answer that question, often you'll find that that judgment or that tag or that label that you've placed on that particular person doesn't serve you at all. It doesn't make your life better. It doesn't make you perform better. In fact, it will often make you perform worse. So the first way to answer this particular question is to really create some self-awareness around where that term is coming from. Is it coming from a place of bitterness, jealousy, comparison? And if it is, ask yourself if it's helping you, all right? The second part of the question comes back on how we deal with any sort of micromanagement. Now, the vast majority of micromanagers, there's two aspects. One's a power aspect, and the other aspect is about trust. And trust is one of those absolute bedrocks of leadership in any type of situation. It is a foundation stone. So when people micromanage you, it's either a power play by them over you, or it's because they don't trust you. And fundamentally, whatever, there are other reasons why people will micromanage you, but they are the vast majority of reasons. It's either a power play, or in the most cases, it's because of a lack of trust. So what you need to do to stop that micromanagement is to build that level of trust. And there's multiple ways that you can do that. And as I said, we've got an article based around that on the Dumb Leaders Handbook. So you want to build trust with the leader. You want to be proactive in providing them updates. You want to be able to do the work to the best of your standards. You want to open up and keep the communication lines clear. You want to not be seen to be secretive or not to have another agenda. Because to have trust, to have people build trust, you need to be trustworthy. So there's so many aspects that come into play. Lead by example, do the job, create the open communication channels, update on a regular basis. And those are some of the things that will help you deal with a manager that is going to micromanage you. Concentrate on building trust. Concentrate on being trustworthy. Concentrate on being the best that you can be. Concentrate on achieving deadlines, hitting targets, meeting the standards. And ultimately, what should happen is that particular leader will start to trust you and be empowered by you to leave you alone so that you can get your job done. Now, if the micromanagement continues, obviously it's a power thing, and then ultimately you've got to make a call. Do you want to work within that particular environment? And the other thing that I'd probably just be asking, what is the micromanagement about? Like, is it about deadline critical tasks? Is it about major important projects? Or is it about everyday run-of-the-mill stuff? And once again, there's something in that for you when you start to think about, what are they micromanaging me on? Is it about getting my emails done by 10 o'clock every day? Is it about responding to a customer within 24 hours? Because if they're the standards, if they're the daily standards of work and you're being micromanaged on that, the biggest thing that you need to look for is your own work performance. Because most people, and I say this, most people, once they're confident and comfortable that someone is hitting the daily standards of and expectations around work, they don't follow up. They don't follow up. Okay? But if you are doing everything that's required and more, and there's still micromanagement. And, ultimately you've got to make the call, whether you want to be in that particular environment, whether it's a power thing, whether it's a creation of fear thing from the leader. That's part of the questions that you have to ask yourself. So twofold, look at where that label or that judgment's coming from. As I said, you don't want to be judging someone based around your own perceptions of yourself, because honestly, the research continues to tell us that when we rate ourselves at a much higher rate, or we rate ourselves on our own potential and not necessarily on our track record and performance. And then the other thing is just make sure that you analyze the tasks that you are being micromanaged on, and just really ram them home. Do the job, lead by example, update, keep the lines of communication open, make sure that you're feeding back before they come and check on you, those sorts of things. And I've got no doubt that micromanager should, in the vast majority of cases, change their behaviour. Hey, I'm Tony. Thanks for listening to the Dumb Leaders podcast. As per always, if you want to ask a question, just like Mr. Anonymous did today, please do so over at dumbleaders.com. It's the Dumb Leaders Handbook. We're building a library of a library of lessons from lousy leaders, and these are all lessons that will help you become a better leader. Until next week, you know the story. I'll see you then. Bye for now.